To welcome you to the July 25th, 2023 meeting of the City Plan Commission. Before we begin, I'll outline the procedure that we will follow for our public hearing. As each agenda item is called, the applicant or his or her representatives and persons for the request will be allowed to speak, and persons against the request will be allowed to speak. If there's opposition to the request, the applicant will be allowed to make a short rebuttal. All persons wishing to speak need to come to the microphone at the front of the room. Please state your name and address for the record. All statements made should be relevant to the agenda item and be limited to 3 minutes. If there are several persons in favor of or opposed to a request, we encourage you to allow 1 or 2 persons to act as spokesperson for the group. If you like, a spokesperson for the group may request that the group stand and be recognized. While public discourse is very important to the commission, we have to maintain order in the meeting so that all persons may be heard and city business may be conducted. If so directed by me, the Sergeant at Arms, shall remove from this meeting any person while addressing the commission or while attending the commission meeting, making personal, impertinent, or slanderous remarks, who becomes boisterous, or making unauthorized remarks from the audience, stomping of feet, whistles, yells, or similar demonstration. Commission members have reviewed each of these items in a previous work session. The recommendation we make tonight to the City Council will be based on the work session and the information provided by staff, as well as any additional information presented tonight. After completing the hearing on each item, the commission will consider action on the item. The action taken tonight on these items will be in the form of a recommendation to the City Council. The City Council will also conduct a hearing on the ordinance, which will be held on Tuesday, August 1st, 2023 in the Bosque Theater of the Waco Convention Center, 100 Washington Avenue. The record and recommendation of the Plan Commission and new testimony will be considered by the council at this time. First item on our agenda are our subdivision plots and what is city's presentation.
Mr. Chair, may I make one modification to your instructions, which we'll need to clarify? The recommendation will go to council except for the plats for which Plan Commission is the determiner.
Excellent. Yes, so correction to the opening statement, the plats will be completed here and the ordinance change will go to council on August 1st.
All right, Mr. Chair, we're going to act on the or hear the variance request for number 1. This is a public hearing for a variance request to the requirement for the water extension per the Waco subdivision ordinance for the proposed subdivision plat entitled final plat of the TJ Patterson addition lots 1 and 2 block 1. Staff does recommend approval of the variance request and requiring the line extension based on the following findings and conditions. The finding is that extraordinary hardships or significant practical difficulties may result from strict compliance with the subdivision ordinance regulations, and the effect of the variance will not be detrimental to public safety, health, welfare, or injurious to other properties. The property lies within dual CCN water provider areas, but new water meter services in the area service area of Aqua Texas is not currently available unless Aqua Texas updates the area through the PUC. And due to the specific conditions of the site involve strict enforcement of these regulations would impose an undue hardship on the applicant. We do have 2 conditions: that further subdivision of the lot that increases the number of lots will require the extension of the water main to serve the new subdivision, and a note on the plat must be added stating the lot is not served by public water provider.
Thank you. We'll open our public hearing. Is the applicant or her representative here to speak tonight? Anyone else here to speak in favor of or opposed to the request? We'll close our public hearing. We have a recommendation of approval with conditions, or sorry, approval variance request. Was your recommendation straight approval? Okay. For the variance request, we'll entertain a motion.
I move to approve in accordance with the city staff recommendation.
Motion by Mr. Lane, second by Mr. Cole for the recommendation. Any final discussion? Please poll the commission.
Allen?
Yes.
Briscoe?
Yes.
Cole?
Yes.
Harris?
Yes.
Jefferson? Lane?
Yes.
Ramos?
Yeah.
Now we'll act on the plat for that subdivision. This is a public hearing on the final plat of the TJ Patterson addition, lots 1 through 2, block 1. Staff does recommend approval with conditions of this plat, minus the requirement to extend the water. Yeah, we need you for this one.
Oh.
Yeah, sorry. We're not 2 years yet.
Oh.
Yeah, we're acting on the plat, but this was the variance. Now we're acting on the. plat. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Minus the requirement to extend, the water. That was just, granted a variance to.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Open our public hearing. Applicant or anyone here to speak in favor of this item? Anyone here to speak in opposition? Public hearing. Recommendation of approval with conditions for the final plat, and we'll entertain a motion.
I make the motion that we approve with conditions.
Motion by Mr. Ramos, second by Ms. Briscoe. Any final discussion? Please poll the commission.
Allen.
Yeah.
Briscoe,
Yes.
Cole,
Yes.
Harris.
Yes.
Jefferson,
Yes.
Lane,
Yes.
Ramos.
Yes.
Mr. Allen has filed a substantial affidavit of substantial interest and will not be participating in this case. This is the public hearing on the final plat of the DT Chamberlain and Taylor edition, lots 14 through 18, block 13. And staff does recommend approval with condition on this plat.
And we'll open our public hearing. Is the applicant or his or her representatives here to speak tonight? Is there anyone here to speak in favor of this item or opposition to this item? Close our public hearing. Recommendation of approval with conditions for the final plat, the DT Chamber and Taylor edition. We'll entertain a motion.
Move to approve with conditions based on staff findings.
A motion by Mr. Lane, second by Ms. Jefferson. Any final discussion? Please poll the commission.
Briscoe,
Yes.
Cole,
Yes.
Harris,
Yes.
Jefferson, Lane,
Yes.
Ramos.
Yes.
And he's back.
Was hoping I'd see you looking through. Make sure. Okay.
All right, and then our,
Ordinance.
Mr. Chair, this is a public hearing to consider possible ordinance amendments to various sections in Appendix B subdivisions and or Chapter 28 zoning of the Code of Ordinances of the City of Waco, Texas, dealing with new requirements of State of Texas House Bill 3699, which has an effective date of September 1st, 2023. We covered these changes in the work session. Be happy to answer any additional questions, and staff does recommend approval of these changes.
We'll open the public hearing. Is there anyone here to speak in favor of or opposed to the ordinance amendments? Okay, great. Is anyone here in favor?
We are largely in favor with maybe some reservations.
Okay.
Which way you want to cast our vote on that?
We'll go ahead. Go ahead. There's only two. So yeah, if you can state your name and address and comments to the commission.
All right, Travis Parks, 109 West Second Street, Georgetown, Texas, 7866. I am general counsel for WBW Development Group. We are largely in favor of this motion, and our only concern is looking at how it's going to have a ripple effect. It's very clear that the House bill removed construction plans from the dot plot requirement. And it also removed any discussion of construction plans and other various plans at all from section 212. That definition was removed. And if you look at some of the provisions inside of the new stuff, like this list for completeness, it says that it's got to be directly tied to a provision in this subchapter. So that begs the question, well, can the list that requires completeness determinations include something about construction? I think that's where the city was going. That's where Mr. Peters was going when they removed the large majority of the plan and profile drawings and so on and so forth from provision 3.303. The question is, did it go far enough? And will we even know until maybe that January 1st review happens? So what we're here to do is ask questions and see if we can come up with solutions. In the work session, it was mentioned that there's a housing crunch and the availability and affordability of houses is a key concern. We are part of the solution to that problem. We put together a lot of affordable housing, and we're trying to do that as quickly as we can, working with the DMV and working with the city council. So we view this as an opportunity to make that process a lot faster, but we also are aware that anytime something changes, there's a likelihood that something's going to break. And we want to make sure that it doesn't break and we can get our approvals going hopefully faster than they were under the old ordinance. But right now under 3.303E, it says that plan documents, including plan and profile drawings, drainage maps, and construction plans will be reviewed by the City of Waco Public Works and Utility Services prior to the submission on the application. So it looks like it's a completeness requirement that may fall outside of what is able to be required under Section 212. Section 212 had a list of things that used to be in here. And they actually track very well to the rest of 3.303. The ones that were removed are no longer there. So the plan and profile drawings aren't there anymore, but the previous page of 3.303 has things that are directly tied to Section 212.004 of the local government code. So that's why they're still there. And have that precursor requirement reviewed by the City of Public Works or the City of Waco Public Works. I don't know if that's review and approval. If it's review and approval, it might be a step too far. If this is just saying that you need to have construction plans on file so that this can all get done quickly and efficiently, it's still pretty close to the line because construction plans are no longer something that are allowed to be required in the let's see if I've got that reference here. Section 212.0081. This is a new provision under House Bill 3699. In adopting a list, the required documentation and other information must be related to a requirement authorized under the subchapter. That subchapter being 212. So if construction plans aren't a part of 212, they can't be a part of the completeness review. And that's where I don't know how we undo that knot because it's a little bit confusing. And I think that it's something we'll just need to work on together to try to find a way to make sense of, well, we really need your construction plans. We can't require them. And I'm not sure that we have the statutory authority under the shop law anymore to require them to be approved, but we got to get them somehow. So that's why we're not completely like 100%. This is, we want to push this through, no questions asked. We want to push it through. We just want to ask the questions to make sure that we are still able to do the development process in a way that meets the housing needs of the city. And I'm happy to respond to any questions I might have just caused by that very fast talking.
In layman's terms, and then I'd like to ask City to speak to what you said. Is there a suggestion you have for any, in your mind, a change to the terminology as it's proposed that would be more amenable, or?
It would depend on what, I mean, we asked the question earlier today, and the staff has been great about responding because record drawings had been in this proposed ordinance, and we asked and they said, no, that wasn't really meant to be there. It needs to be pulled out. It needs to be somewhere else. And so we posed the same question. Do these plans need to be reviewed and approved or just submitted or just reviewed? We don't know what the answer is. So I would say, if anything, submitted might be closer to the way I would describe it. Just to say, yeah, they've been here. We're working on them. You can keep going with your plat. If the question is, well, if you guys don't even have a draft of a construction plan for us to review, what's the point of getting the final plat built? I can understand that. But if it's, well, we need to look at all your drainage, we need to look at all your reports, we need to look at your construction plans and make sure they work before you can even do the final plat. I think that runs afoul of what the new legislation requires.
Staff or Will, would y'all like to speak to that? Sounds like y'all might have had discussion too, so.
Yeah, and I'll let Will chime in there. I think the intent is that, and Todd, that we had something and maybe there's better wording that at least the process that started and there was some tie to what was actually being constructed. So if there was impacts on the plat, we'd have some of that information. I don't think it was intended that we'd have the construction plans completely approved before you could submit the final plat. And so maybe there's some better wording we can come up with. Todd, Will, do you have anything to add to that?
I can just add my two cents. Development engineer for Public Works. In terms of the process, is it your expectation that final plat would be requisite for starting construction? In the general, just in a general sense.
Final plat review is what we're concerned about.
Okay.
If we can't even get our application in until construction plans have been submitted and reviewed and approved.
Okay.
That's going to add in a substantial amount of time to the approval process, especially in light of construction plans no longer being a part of the shop law. You know, if we were to say, well, you really need to have all these things approved before you proceed, and there's a shop law where we still have a cycle that we can go through and hopefully work on comments, get them cleared, and there's a definite end goal, like they can be calculated by statute. That's one thing, but once they're just out there and there's no deadline, we could get completely in deadlock and not even have a chance to submit the plat. That's problematic.
But are you seeing it as a deadlock that would prevent you from starting building?
I think that it's a little bit of both. I mean, we can't start without approved construction plans, but we also can't finish our project and sell the lots, the ultimate goal, without the final plat. So, I mean, our final goal is to get the lots sold to builders and build homes. The steps along the way, any one of them that makes that worse is a problem, whether it's on the construction plan side or the plat side. What we're here to do is to talk and try, I mean, encourage a stakeholders meeting, you know, as soon as we can to get other developers going to go, all right, how are we going to do this? I mean, we adopted, but how are we going to get together and make this thing work? Anytime the legislature gives us, you know, a new set of rules, we just got to do that.
Right, yeah, that's right.
I think that's good. I mean, I think your comments are great, and I'm in agreement with most of them. From the perspective of what we've been presented with here, you know, it's kind of my opinion that I see a preliminary plat being submitted. Get the certain required legal submittal requirements in and get those approved with the preliminary plat. And then at that point, you know, and this is a discussion we're having internally too. It's, you know, what's to prevent you from getting a permit to start construction? Get going on the building even sooner than normal, and then deal with the final plat on a separate time. And that gets you, you know, started on construction without having to get that final plat fully, you know, fully approved and all that. And so I see that as, hey, that's an option. You get started faster, and then, you know, is having full construction plans approved as a required submittal for a final plat? Well, it's a given because you're already starting construction, put the final plat off to wait. And like I said, these are just our thoughts. You know, they're nothing that's been vetted or anything like that. I think it'd be good for that stakeholder discussion like that.
Yeah, and I don't want to get too far into the weeds about specifics on that, but the changes to the construction plan can dramatically change the costs of construction. And that's something that, I mean, once we're that far into the process, you know, we're kind of pot committed. If we're starting construction while the construction plans are being approved, it may make the project no longer feasible. We're getting a head start on construction.
I wouldn't say that you would start before the plans are. I would say you would start construction once your project plans are for the development, but you wouldn't need to get the final plat approved, the final lot layout to start the construction on.
Fair enough. And as I mentioned, that may be a workshop thing. That's not necessarily, but since y'all are still listening to me and Sergeant and Armstead taught me on that. 5.209A4 has a proposed change that may be something similar to at least consider about wording. Because in that section, it looks like there was a clear intention that submittal should be submittal and approval. There's a red line that says complete record drawing plans with required improvements have been submitted to and approved by the city engineer. So that's something that, you know, if we hadn't shown up today and needed to make our case in a month or 3 or whenever, that this change didn't really mean reviewed and approved for the construction plans, I'd be pointing to this and saying, when you change the ordinance, made it a point of adding language saying that this review thing has approval as a requirement. But I do like that it uses the word submitted instead of reviewed. I think that it's safe to say that if we're submitting it, y'all are reviewed.
Yeah.
That's my recommendation. And I think I'll see the rest of my negative time because y'all have been kind to give me way more than 3 minutes.
Sure.
We will consider those changes as proposed and try to see what internally which direction we want to go, once this is presented to council.
Is it fair to say y'all had to make, like, we had to make these changes pretty quickly and so still fleshing out both maybe the language long-term and the
Yeah, to
actual,
meet that September first
Yeah.
date, effective date, to get, I mean, we had to act on it today and then council, so it's going to council next Tuesday, so we'll continue to work on some of that language. And like I said, you know, as we work through this, there might have to be tweaks to it moving forward, and we have to bring some more to it back to you, so.
I think,
We do have a developers group meeting Thursday that's on the agenda to talk through more at the making sausage level for the developers. So hopefully we can work out on some of that wording before the council meeting.
you could state your name.
So Travis Whitus, work with Travis Parks also on the work for Yalgo Engineering.
Okay.
We're kind of sister companies, Yalgo Engineering, WDW Development. My address is 109 West Second Street. So like I said, I'm on the engineering side, I'm actually on the plant production side. And I just wanted to say, you know, I agree with what Travis said. You know, what I'm really concerned about is the 3699, they did remove plan so back in 2019 with 3167, the shot clock, they had a plan and plat. With this most recent 3699, they removed plan from the shot clock requirements. So really what I'm concerned about is just timeliness of approval of construction plans. Because, you know, back before 3167, you know, there was times where it would be 6 months until we could ever get approval of construction plans in other cities, just because, you know, the city engineer didn't have time for it or something like that. So that's, you know, that I guess is kind of a byproduct of 3699. It doesn't have anything to do with City Waco itself. I'm just really concerned about getting timely approvals on our subdivision or construction plans. So kind of my suggestion would be putting in some sort of timeline for review and approval of the construction plan, especially if it's a condition for plat approval. Because, you know, that's kind of what we're in the business of doing, getting our construction plans out so we can start work. We need to make sure that we can get that done as quickly as possible.
Are you or representatives from either of your companies going to be at the meeting? That
I plan on it.
okay, sounds good. Well, my take would be, it sounds like what the city's done on the wording is pretty good, all things considered, and so like some of those things can maybe be hashed out more with the folks who live and breathe that on a day-to-day basis, but that's fine.
Yeah, and I mean, our intent is to still, you know, follow the premise, the intent of the shot clock on the construction plan review. It just, and our thought is that it will simplify it, because now it takes it out of having to follow the same approval process as plats, where you can only submit it on this date and it has to come before y'all, and you get in the spin cycle. Now it's kind of removed and at a staff level, and it can, but I understand the concern about that, but it's our intent to have the same level of scrutiny and timeliness on the reviews as we have now. So, but we'll work on that with y'all to make sure that happens.
I have a lousy memory. And so anytime that I've got a word that I'm gonna have to remember what I meant, I just try to change it to one that I won't have to. And that's why I was looking at review versus submit and going with submit, there's no question. That means if it's in, you're good. Review, I don't know. And that's why, all right, I said I was gonna stop talking, I'm done now.
And that's something we'll get together and make sure that we're okay with it. And if so, we can make that change to E.
Any other speakers? Close the public hearing.
Recommendation of approval, city staff on the ordinance updates. Any discussion for commissioners? Otherwise, we'll entertain a motion.
So I guess even with our approval today, if we did so, this is something that will be worked on between now and next Tuesday, basically, and will be changed.
Yeah, we'll work on some of that.
Okay.
We can still wordsmith it
Okay.
before next.
With that in mind, I'll move for approval.
Motion for approval by Mr. Lane, second by Ms. Jefferson. Any final discussion? Please poll the commission.
Allen.
Yes.
Briscoe.
Yes.
Cole.
Yes.
Harris.
Yes.
Jefferson.
Yes.
Lane.
Yes.
Ramos.
Yes.
That concludes our agenda and we will adjourn our meeting. Oh, sorry, not quite yet.
We can adjourn.
I'm the.